Hello, psychology scholars! Welcome to our third lecture for Chapter 1, An Introduction to Psychology. In this video, we will focus on the history of psychology, Part 2. Beginning in the late 1950s, opposition to behaviorism and psychodynamic theory blended into a loose alliance that eventually became a new perspective called humanistic psychology. Humanistic psychology began as a reaction against the two schools of thought that were dominating American psychology at that time. Behaviorism's insistence on applying methods of physical science to human behavior neglected crucial subjective data. And psychoanalysis' emphasis on unconscious drives relegated the conscious mind to relative unimportance. The early humanistic psychologists wanted to restore importance of consciousness and offer a more holistic view of human life. Here we start to see the field of psychology shift back to consciousness. The humanistic perspective emphasizes the unique qualities of humans, especially their freedom and their potential for personal growth. Humanists take an optimistic view of human nature. They argue that humans are free, rational beings and are fundamentally different from animals, in contrast with the behaviorists who saw all organisms as vulnerable to the environment. The most prominent architects of the humanistic movement have been Carl Rogers and Abraham Maslow. Both maintain that to fully understand people's behavior, psychologists must take into account the fundamental human drive toward personal growth. Abraham Maslow developed a hierarchy of needs from biological to self-actualization. Carl Rogers introduced what he called person-centered therapy, the idea that a loving, accepting environment can enhance personal growth. More about Maslow and Rogers in Motivation and Therapy chapters. In the 1960s, behaviorism began to lose some of its momentum, and psychologists began challenging the idea that a model that neglected mental processes could fully explain human behavior. This led to the era of cognitive psychology, where special attention was paid to language and memory, research on flashbulb memory, the tip of the tongue phenomenon, and working memory. Cognitive psychology is the school of psychology that examines internal mental processes like problem solving, memory, and language. Cognition refers to thinking and memory processes, and cognitive development refers to long-term changes in these processes. The cognitive perspective focuses on the way people process information. Cognitive psychology is radically different from previous psychological perspectives. It is characterized by both of the following. 1. It accepts the use of the scientific method and generally rejects introspection as a valid method of investigation, unlike Freudian psychoanalysis. 2. It explicitly acknowledges the existence of internal mental states such as belief, desire, and motivation, unlike behavioral psychology. It was the arrival of the computer that gave cognitive psychology the terminology it needed to investigate the human mind. The use of computers allowed psychologists to try to understand the complexities of human cognition by comparing it with something simpler and better understood, an artificial system like a computer. Information processing paradigm was adopted by cognitive psychologists as a model of how human thought works. More on this perspective in the Thinking and Intelligence chapter. The biological perspective is the only approach in psychology that investigates thoughts, feelings, and behaviors from a biological or physical point of view. This perspective focuses on the structure and function of the brain, nervous system, and hormones, and the role they play in determining our thoughts, feelings, and subsequent behaviors. Biological psychology also examines heritability through twin studies. The basic assumptions of the biological perspective are: behavior is determined by biology. There is a genetic basis for all behaviors. Most behaviors have an adaptive or evolutionary function, and behaviors originate from specific locations in the brain. To recap psychology's perspectives, psychodynamic perspective focuses on how unconscious fears, desires, and motivations influence thoughts, behaviors, and the development of personality traits and psychological problems later in life. The behavioral perspective focuses on how environmental factors called stimuli affect observable behavior called responses. The belief that people and animals are controlled by their environment, and specifically that we are the result of what we have learned from our environment. Behaviorists focus on how organisms learn new behaviors or change existing ones depending on whether events in their environments reward or punish these behaviors. Humanistic perspective emphasizes how each person is unique and individual and has the free will to change at any time in their lives. We are each responsible for our own happiness and well-being. We have the innate or inborn capacity for self-actualization, which is our unique desire to achieve our highest potential. Cognitive perspective emphasizes what goes on in people's heads, how people reason, remember, understand language, solve problems, explain experiences, acquire moral standards, and form beliefs. It focuses on how we process, store, and use information, and how this information influences what we pay attention to, perceive, learn, remember, believe, and feel. And lastly, the biological perspective focuses on the physiology and structure of the brain and how this influences behavior, feelings, and thoughts. Biological factors like chromosomes, hormones, and the brain all have significant influence on human behavior. The belief that most behavior is inherited and has an adaptive or evolutionary function. And now for a more inclusive history of psychological contributions. Lita Stetter Hollingworth, 1914, was an African-American female psychologist who founded the psychology of women. Hollingworth challenged the prevailing opinion at the time that women were intellectually inferior to men and essentially semi-invalid when they were menstruating. Hollingworth's research demonstrated that women were as intelligent and capable as men were, no matter what time of the month it was. Francis Sumner, I mentioned earlier, in 1920 was the first African-American male to earn a PhD in psychology in the United States. Sumner is referred to as the father of black psychology. He established an independent psychology department at Howard University. His line of research included emotions, religion, education, and intelligence. Inez Beverly Prosser, in 1933, was the first African-American female to earn a PhD in psychology. She studied how racially integrated and racially segregated schools impact African American children, which would later be instrumental in the 1954 Brown versus Board of Education case. Ruth Howard, in 1934, was the second African American female to earn a PhD in psychology. Her dissertation was the first of its kind, which studied the developmental history of 229 sets of triplets. She worked with children living in dysfunctional family situations or foster homes. She often met with families and representatives from schools and clinics to help children in foster care and to support women who were unemployed and undereducated. George Sanchez, in 1938, was the first Latino male to earn a PhD in psychology. He was a pioneer in the field of education as well as a civil rights activist. He fought for equal educational opportunities for Mexican American students and opposed the use of racially biased, standardized tests and segregation based on non-proficiency in English. He is considered the father of Chicano psychology. Kenneth and Mamie Clark. The Clarks, husband and wife team of psychologists, were the first African Americans to earn PhDs in psychology from Columbia University. They are known for their famous doll experiments that exposed internalized racism and the negative effects of segregation for African American children. The Clarks were influential to the civil rights movement, and their expertise allowed them to testify as expert witnesses in several school desegregation cases, including Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. In 1971, Kenneth Clark was the first African American male elected as president of APA. Marta Bernal, in 1962, was the first female of Mexican descent to earn a PhD in psychology. Her work focused on training parents and other adults to assist in the treatment of children's psychological problems. Bernal worked with the APA to develop practices that have helped to diversify the field of psychology. She proposed a groundbreaking model of Hispanic children's ethnic identity development and conducted an influential program of research with colleagues while mentoring the next generation of Hispanic scholars. Darrell Wing Su, in 1972, was the first president of the Asian American Psychological Association that he co-founded with his brother, Dr. Stanley Su. Su's childhood memories of being teased because of his ethnicity led to his fascination with human behavior. His interest and passion led him to become a prominent voice in cross-cultural studies. He studied microaggressions. Reiko True, in 1976, played an active role in the creation of the Asian American Community Mental Health Program in Oakland, California. She became the first female director of mental health, substance abuse, and forensic services, and was able to show the importance of creating multicultural focused programs and generating programs for women with children. After the Kobe earthquake in 1995, True traveled to Japan and established a program that provided mental health services to disaster victims. These are just a few of the ethnical diversity of psychological contributions. I have posted a link in Canvas under Other Instructional Materials to the APA Office of Ethnic Minority Affairs featured psychologists. This website features ethnic minority psychologists and their contributions to the field, both past and present. In our next lecture video, we will discuss what psychologists do.